I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor, the podcast. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing on this fine day?
Much better.
Glad to hear it.
Yes.
Glad to hear it. So where are we going today?
Well, it's like a wagon. You're going to pull the wagon. I'm going to be in the wagon. And I'm going to respond to everything you have to say. Point, counterpoint.
Is it both ways, or up the hill both ways in the snow?
Yes. That's how you get to school.
That is how you get to school. Well, I would like to start with a big decision we had this week, which is the Hunter Biden coming down with 3 guilty verdicts in his Wilmington, Delaware case.
Good.
That's where I would like to start.
Good. I think we should start there.
Okay.
And I think we should almost end there.
We should start and end there.
Yes. Biden, Biden, Biden.
Oh, all about the Bidens?
Yes. All about the Bidens.
It's kind of like all about the Benjamins, but it's the Bidens Benjamins?
Yes. It's all about Hunter's Benjamins.
Oh, Hunter's Benjamins. So what we just saw this week, or what we saw on Tuesday, King Kamehameha the First Day, what we saw on Tuesday was a jury that came down with 3 guilty verdicts. Well, it's 1 verdict, I believe, but on 3 counts. So they came down with 3 counts of guilty. He did drugs, was doing drugs, was continuing to do drugs, and he lied on the federal form where he said he was not doing drugs or a drug addict.
Well, when people do drugs or are drug addicts, do they normally tell the truth?
Probably not.
So did they try that as part of their defense?
Had a problem how he went to rehab, but at that actual minute in which he bought the gun, he was not using. However, one of the pieces of evidence that the prosecution used was him telling another party that they were waiting on a dealer. Well, what do you do when you wait on a dealer?
A gun dealer or a drug dealer?
In this case, it was a drug dealer.
Okay.
And he was, and well, you want to say, well, he was a drug addict, so, it's not fair that they go after him. Well, if we didn't go after drug addicts for all the crimes they committed, would we just accept in society that drug addicts are going to commit crimes and they're okay, but regular folk aren't allowed to commit crimes because they're not doing drugs?
No. It seems like it, though, when you look at all the crime across the country, that it's okay to do drugs and you get away with things. It's okay to look at laws in a different manner or lawlessness. But I'm glad that there was 12 jurors that put their collective heads together, looked at all the evidence. Now, I think I talked about it last week. I don't know if they were capable of understanding the charges.
All of the legalese that we talked about.
Maybe it was so simple that they could understand it, and maybe not. But they did come back with a guilty verdict. Was it a tit for tat, this for that?
And I would say that it shouldn't be viewed that way, but others might view it that way. If you look at a week ago, we had the Trump guilty verdict on 34 counts. Now, in Trump's case, he wasn't offered, as far as we know, like a plea deal that was going to essentially absolve him of all of his crimes for an admission to one thing that was going to get him a little bit of probation. As far as we know, the public, we're not privy to all of the offerings that are out there. But if you remember, Hunter Biden was given a pretty sweetheart deal.
Yes.
And in fact, he signed on to it. And it was going to make a lot of his problems, a lot of his crimes go away. And because the judge looked at it and said, I have never seen a plea agreement such as this, it was tossed out, and now these other cases have gone forward. I'm a little bit surprised that they got to the resolution that they did, because I thought there would have been another hashing out of plea deals.
Well, this case was so quick, too. I think it was less than a week.
Yes.
Maybe a week and a half. They picked a jury. They seated the jury. They heard the evidence. I guess because it's a simple crime, so to speak. If you lie on an application and you have the application, and you also have the preponderance of evidence that you're a drug user at the time.
No, that would be preponderance would be at a civil level. So in this case, it would have to be
criminal level.
Criminal level, and it would have to be a higher standard that they would have to beyond a reasonable doubt. Not every far-fetched, made-up story out there would have to be. Has the prosecution proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt? And in this case, it looks like they did.
So had all these experts, the CIA, NSA, Secret Service, had all said that the laptop was fake.
Mm-hmm.
Had prior to Biden winning office, they came out and said, oh no, this thing's for reals. They could have taken care of this 3 years ago. It would have been a done deal. Our economy, which I hope you talk about this evening, would not be a train wreck, and we would all be in a different position right now.
I mean, the hope is that we'd be in a different position. And I do want to talk more about having a laptop, and it's going to go back into that category of, well, he was a drug user. Are you going to use his lowest points and he should just get a free pass, is what it seems like we're being told. Oh, because he was a drug user, you should set aside everything that was on that laptop. Now, let's remember, on that laptop, they had the fact that he was using drugs over and over again. And in fact, hate to keep saying in fact, apparently, he needed to smoke crack like every 20 minutes. He had such a problem that he had to do drugs every 20 minutes. But somehow he still managed to make millions upon millions of dollars for him and his family. On that laptop was what appears to be proof that they were using his father's position in order to strong-arm foreign individuals into paying millions to Hunter Biden. So, and then there's other evidence on the laptop, if we are to believe it, that then Hunter Biden would turn around and give money to his dad. So you might want to say, or some may say, that, well, Joe Biden didn't do that. Joe Biden didn't strong arm anyone. Joe Biden wasn't working for a foreign country. But Joe Biden was meeting with the individuals, going to those foreign countries, shaking hands, having dinner, doing all of these things. And the money was going from one family member, Hunter Biden, to the other. And he was borrowing it, or he owed his dad money.
It was implied by what Hunter was doing. His dad was
the big guy,
the big dude, the big chief, the head honcho, the big dog.
So now that we have the reemergence of this laptop, which is, yes, it's in fact truthful, there's a couple of things that I would like to know. Are we going to see the 51 intelligence officials who debunked it as Russian disinformation lose their credentials, lose their kind of their stature, lose their status, even if they don't lose their credentials? But are they going to lose their status as go-to sources? We see some of those individuals have gone on to be pundits at other news organizations.
Well, they should, as well as lose their clearances if any of them still have a clearance.
Active. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But we have been told for 8 years now that Trump is working for Russia, that Trump is colluding with Russia, that the laptop was Russia collusion or Russian disinformation, and that all of this put together means that Trump is still working for Putin. How many times do we have to hear that there is proof positive that Trump is colluding with Russia?
Just heard it a week ago that
laptop.
He's still colluding with them.
Oh, well, the laptop went poof. The dossier went poof. So what is it now?
All right. Well, I watched a YouTube video of some young lady that actually is the one that released the story about the laptop.
Yes.
And they did everything but put her in shackles, basically, and want to haul her off to jail. They tried to embarrass her and take away, quote, her credentials.
Right. Take away her ability to earn a paycheck doing her reporting.
What she wants now is an apology. She wants those 51 dudes and ladies to be held to account as well, like you just so stated. They need to have their credentials pulled. They need to not make any money in the news media, and they should actually be sued civilly.
Right, because they may try to say that they said it had all of the earmarks of Russian disinformation. So they were trying to give the little, oh, you can't hold me to account statements in there, because I didn't say you were or it was. I said it has likeness to. So they're going to try to say, well, I didn't specifically say. However, if we look at it, immediately all of these news organizations were like, oh, it's garbage, it's garbage, it's garbage. So if you can't go after the 51 in that regard, go after all of the other news organizations who then took the words out of context, if that's what you want to say.
So it's like the pandemic when you had doctors and scientists having one version and theirs was wrong. They were being censored by people who do not have degrees in the medical field. You have the CIA, the Secret Service, DARPA, FBI doing their level best to defend all senators and congressmen, not just Biden. You know me, I'm a YouTube junkie. Watched a former CIA operative today, as a matter of fact, talk about how they do these things and how they compartmentalize who they're going to go after and who they're not going to go after. And there's an attorney in D.C. that's defending several FBI agents who have lost their clearances or been released because they showed support for Trump during January 6th and prior. That, hey, there's a bunch of stuff going on here that the upper leadership's trying, and we need to put a stop to it. And they put a stop to it. They basically fired them all.
Right. They don't want people who are going to expose them, or they don't want people who are going to go against their narrative of what they deem as acceptable.
What's unacceptable to me is the party that I have chosen to be part of, 99.99% of the time, doesn't seem to have the strength to push back against these people. And when they do get a little blowback from them, they put their tails between their legs and they run the other way. And I heard a good case in point the other day by Donald Trump's son, Donald Jr., was making the statement about how Lindsey Graham, before a committee meeting, said, we need to investigate this and why are they picking on Trump in this manner? But nothing ever happened. And Trump Jr.'s response was, wait a minute, you're the head of that committee. You can do it.
Yeah.
They never seem to do it.
So to me, it makes you think that they have dirt on all of them. So then they'll flap their gums.
5 minutes of lip service.
And then they'll back away. So they must, the party that's in power, both in front of and behind the scenes, but in front of can do and say whatever they want because they know that there's going to be nothing to come back against them.
And you are 100% correct when you talk about the party in power, and it relates to all of this, is through taxes, through the IRS. Because you now have one party that's in charge right now that is basically going to hammer 14 or 15 states if the Trump era taxes expire.
Yes.
And then when the Republicans had control, it was kind of basically the same thing. They put together some tax laws to punish blue states.
Yes, we were one of the blue states that was punished. So the SALT taxes, state and local write-off, they lowered it to cap at $10,000. And in high tax states, that is very easily met with your property taxes and your state income taxes. It's very easy to meet the $10,000. And especially in places like San Francisco, Orange County, Los Angeles, where you tend to have higher income earners, think Silicon Valley as well, that if you have two high income earners who marry each other, they get hammered by those taxes. So the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, in that regard, did hammer blue states, most blue states. And then if those expire, on one hand, it will help if you have the write-offs. Now, mind you, most people don't do a write-off. They do just your basic,
Right.
your basic one. They don't itemize and write off. They have your
They do a
basic standard deduction. Yes.
Yep.
And so it hurts only certain groups of people. And then with the child tax credit, you end up in a situation where they're going to reduce the child tax credit if the Tax Cut and Jobs Act expires. Because Trump in 2017 expanded it. Expanded the upper income level and expanded, I believe, also how much it was. There was a temporary one attached to COVID, but even outside of that, it had elevated it. So, but go ahead.
And it makes you wonder, okay, are these guys that are in charge for a short amount of time, 4 to 8 years, are they really the ones responsible for doing this? Or is it people behind the scenes that are really running the show? Because Biden has been in office for, as we've talked at length, 50 years.
So I'm going to say it's the people behind the scenes running the show. Now, if you look at a House of Representatives individual, they're hired 2 years at a time. And I know we talk about, or they're elected, they're not hired, 2 years at a time. And we've talked about how many times these individuals are there for decades. Nancy Pelosi, case in point. They end up getting elected for so many years. But then you have others that last 1 election cycle, 2 election cycles, 3 election cycles. And then they decide to go. Paul Ryan did so many years, and then he quit. John Boehner as well. They had so many years, and then they decide to go into the private sector and get all that done.
And make millions.
So while I know, I'm trying to say, yes, there are people who've been there for years, but then there's people who are only there for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and then they're done, or maybe they move on to an appointment or something. How are they writing thousands of pages multiple times over?
They are not.
They're not
correct.
writing them.
They're
Somebody
already
else.
there.
Yes. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, this one has become popular again. Let's see if I can reintroduce it. Or somebody has a pet project and they put it over in a pile. I know it can be on a computer, and say, I'm going to keep this for when the time is right.
So maybe you folks.
You folks out there.
Just like weapon systems in airplanes that we don't see for years, the Skunk Works airplanes. AI has been around a lot longer than we think, and they've been using AI to write these bills. Because an artificial intelligence, a computer can whip one of those bills out in 5 minutes.
Right. And so we never read the thousands of pages, and that's how. So I want to get around to it. I want to get around to immigration, but I would like to, as our old Biden representative, was it Psaki, Jen Psaki? I'd like to circle back to something. Let's circle back to it, but I'm actually going to circle around to something that I had right here with my Hunter Biden, is Jill Biden. Jill Biden was there for Hunter Biden every day but one. And again, it was a shorter trial, so that didn't make it as hard.
Was she there for him?
Well, she was present in the courtroom every day except Thursday when she was doing the D-Day celebration in France. When she went off to, when she met back up with Biden, I should say. So
when her husband embarrassed us again before the world.
Which is another thing, and another thing. Oh, and one more thing. So It was thought that she was trying to have undue influence on the jury by having big name. I mean, come on, the president's wife is in the courtroom every day but one. That's kind of hefty. You're sitting in a jury box, like right next to the president's wife. I mean, there's a little bit of space, but
why
in the
didn't
same
they
room.
do the same thing that they did to Trump, which is not allow anybody in the courtroom other than reporters and gag orders and no video or anything?
Because,
Just curious. Just asking for a friend.
But anyway, so she jetted with Joe Biden off to France. And then just to go with him, do the D-Day, commemorate D-Day, in which Joe Biden decided to do that little half squat, midair freeze, looked like he was pooping his pants. Not saying he did poop his pants, just saying it kind of looked like it. And then shortly thereafter, he was carted off by his wife when they were supposed to do meet and greets with the vets. But anyway, she jetted over there, jetted back to Wilmington, Delaware for Friday, because that was on a Thursday, jetted back for Friday, got there, was in the courtroom for Friday, and when she's done with that, she jetted back over to France to do a state meeting. I can't remember exactly.
She paid for that out of her own pocket?
So, technically, her flight not to France, because that was state or government work, with Joe Biden, doesn't have to pay for. But when she comes back to Delaware and then goes back to France, she has to pay for that. However, it costs a couple $100,000 to fly her back and forth. But she only has to reimburse the people, the government, maybe a first class ticket worth. So we're talking like $13,000, $15,000, depending on what the government decides the ticket is worth.
Cheapseats.com. My goodness.
Well, so there's some claim that she'll have to pay economy, other that it's the equivalent of first class, given the type of plane it is. But either way, if it was a economy ticket, we're talking less than $2,000. If it's a first class ticket, $13,000-$15,000, depending on what the calculation is. But do you know who's actually going to pay that?
No.
The DNC has agreed to pay for her flight to go to and from the trial.
That's almost like being in the union, paying union dues, and they decide who you're going to vote for.
Why does it matter? Like, I don't understand how somebody can come and step in and say, oh, you were supporting your son? This is a great use of DNC money. Didn't Hillary Clinton at one point have to infuse a bunch of cash into the DNC because it was losing a lot?
Yes.
I'm not saying this is Hillary Clinton money, but why is it that the DNC is agreeing to pay for her flight for her personal reasons of wanting to go for one day to sit in a courtroom for Hunter Biden?
Because she can?
I guess so, because
they know that someone's going to pay for it other than them.
They get to make all these choices. Now, I don't think that she should have to front the costs of the whole thing. I will say that, because she doesn't have a choice of how much security she has to fly with.
Well, there's two ways she could have paid it off. This many.
Okay.
One of the LLCs that they all have, they could have taken money out of one of the LLCs. That's a limited liability corporation. Or number two, she could have gotten another payoff check from the brother that says repayment for loan.
Right, because they still need a loan repayment, right?
Could have said repayment for flight to visit Hunter. Now, I'm not begrudging her for, maybe she does legitimately love her son. Maybe this isn't all political fodder. But when you're doing it on the American's dime, or there's appearance of impropriety, just like the other stuff they've been doing that supposedly is not legal, she shouldn't do it, especially to fly for one day. If it was going to be a 3-month case or a 1 day, they have to pick and choose.
Right. Do you want to go with your husband to France, or do you want to stay for Hunter Biden. And I understand, again, you have a personal choice to make, and she doesn't necessarily have the ability to say, well, I'm just going to hop a commercial flight. I'm going to get on Air France and fly back. I'm going to get on United. I'm going to get on American. I'm going to get on Delta, whatever. She can't just say, I'm going to go buy me an airline ticket and go. But if you know that choice is $223,000.
You don't go.
And, oh, well, I don't even have, she doesn't even have to pay for that. DNC said, I'll pay for it. So she can literally, as our first lady, do personal bidding, fly wherever she wants, and somebody else is coming and stepping in. Doesn't, even though she's elected, well, she's not elected, her husband is, and even though they're Democrats and they fall under the DNC, doesn't that seem like some, I don't know, undue influence?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I do have another few notes on it other than just the money. I thought that evil Republicans were the ones that did not care about the environment.
Oh, I'm burning all that jet fuel?
Mm-hmm.
Good one.
Yeah, so I thought it was just us evil Republicans that hated that. But lo and behold, I mean, she didn't say, hey, can somebody put me up on FaceTime and I'll say hi to my boy right before he goes in. Because mind you, she has been around since he was, I believe, a toddler. So even though she's stepmom, she has been around since he was a toddler. Right. So I don't doubt that they have a relationship.
And back around, what do you say, back around in a circle?
Let's circle back.
Back to the beginning, let's circle back. Point I was going to make is, what have we done as America that's so egregious that a person that works in our government or is the wife of a government employee cannot hop on a civilian airplane and fly home?
Oh, worldwide, who would want to take her out? Or just within our...
Right. Within our own country, right, or within another country. Because once they're out of office, they don't fly on Air Force One or Air Force Two or the helicopters.
Good point. Mic drop.
Here, right here.
Oh. Well, that's a very good point. And something else I was just realizing is that the Prince and Princess of Wales and King Charles and Camilla. I'm not sure about the king and queen specifically, but when they were Duke and Duchess, when they were one more down, they were flying commercial all the time. And they were in line for the throne. So it's not like we don't know who the next president's going to be. It's like literally
right.
They
in
are
line for the throne. That's a lifetime thing.
And they are flying commercially. They are so accepted of life that they are flying commercially.
And
so
you
why
have the one prince that was in the military that was a pilot,
and he flies commercial. Yeah, Prince Harry.
Prince Harry. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a very good point.
Well, and I know Bush now doesn't fly private all the time, I'm sure. And I'm sure they go from hundreds of Secret Service when they're out of office to a handful.
A select few, yes.
When I watched Trump at a fundraiser a couple days ago, he had I don't know how many are out in the audience, but he had 4 guys around him. And I'm sure part of that's private, part of it's government. But, we should not be so arrogant as to believe that we've done such a high value, and it is a very important job, such a high valued career that when you're done with it, because it's only a temporary thing, that you can't go back to at least 75% normalcy.
Well, and if you look at Nancy Pelosi, former number 3 in line to being president, while I understand while she was number 3, they gave her a 757 so she can get back and forth as needed.
Almost every weekend she flew back to the Bay Area.
Right. But now she doesn't have that anymore.
She's not afforded that luxury?
No, as far as I know, unless, please somebody correct me if I am wrong, but I believe now that she's not there, she's not afforded that luxury anymore, so now she's back to flying commercial. Unless, of course, because her and her husband have made so much money, not through any wrongdoing at all.
No, they are the best at picking stocks ever. Well, they're not the best. There's other people in Congress that are a little bit better. I think she was like 12 or 13 on the list.
Yes, we talked about her, and
yeah.
she's the big name that we hear. But
Yeah.
in fact, there are others, Republicans too, who have much higher rates of return.
And Nancy, let the cat out of the bag about January 6th. I know we're not talking about it today, but yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, that goes straight into the election, that we, going into Joe Biden, going into the election, going with Donald Trump, is that she blamed herself for not working with the Capitol Police to have the National Guard ready to go. I mean, so we're just going to step away from that one for now. But let's just talk about Joe Biden. So he went to France. He may or may not have soiled himself. What appears to be, again, he does this half sit thing where he's just like going down. Some say, oh, well, he was looking for a chair. He saw other people sitting, so he was looking for a chair to sit, but then everybody else is standing and he wasn't sure what to do. When we saw him get out of the vehicle to approach, the whole ceremonial setup, he gets out of the vehicle and he looks confused. And I understand a lot of these individuals, the president, the vice president, they have staffers that are setting up their entire schedule. They have people who tell them where to go all the time. Okay, sir, we're going to have the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're doing this. Here's your schedule for the day, brief overview. You're going to give remarks 2 times and then, offer ice cream. Or you're going to do a meet and greet with the public, whatever. The VP is going to go, to a school and give a speech. Okay. But with Joe Biden, he gets out of the vehicle and he's confused. Like, you forgot that you were somewhere. You stand around and you just stare. And then he gets to his mark and he stands around and he stares. I don't mean like that blank look of boredom or, like 50-yard stare where you're just like, okay, I have 37 minutes and then it's my time to give my speech or whatever. And you're just waiting for your time because it's another ceremony.
No, it's my mind has checked out.
Completely.
Yes. And these Democrats that are around him know this. They are just so HE double hockey sticks bent on power and control. They don't want to let it go. Because I'm sure they're fully aware they cannot put somebody in right now quick enough to garner enough votes to win the presidency.
Right. But do you think that they have enough vote? So do you not believe that they, or how can I say that without a double negative? With whom they do have.
Gavin Newsom.
Yes. Basically that they don't have enough because he is so controversial. That he's never been middle of the road Joe, so to speak. He's always been, how much more money of yours can I take? How many more programs can I give? Reallocating funds all the time.
He's almost like a little communist dictator.
He is.
What he is.
It's so funny that Trump gets accused of being a dictator all the time. Well, one, as a businessman, technically he was allowed to be a dictator. CEO, you get to do what you want. You're in charge. You get to issue those dictates. As he would do on his show, you're fired.
And everyone I've heard talk about him that has worked for him has said to a woman and a man, the man is a phenomenal boss. He loves this country. He wants to see everybody here succeed. Cut and dry. Like you said many, many weeks ago, if he was going to be a dictator, he would have done it during his first term. If he has 50-some million people or 60-some now following him, he doesn't have to wait for the election. He could raise his hands up right now and say, go to the Capitol. Let's see a real insurrection.
Right now, why not? You're at home right now. Everybody gather your guns. There's no one, I'm not advocating for this.
Right, that's metaphorical, yes.
But yeah, why not? Most of his people, the evil MAGA people, they accuse all the time of being, hillbilly bumpkins with the guns and America. Why not tell the hillbilly bumpkins who are all about America to grab their guns and mount up?
Okay, it's for real. It's for real skis this time. Because that's not what he's about.
Yes. And to that hillbilly bumpkin, America, why is it in this day and age, right now, right in this moment, if you see somebody flying an American flag at their house, you know who they're voting for?
Because there appears to be a segment of the population that loves this country for our faults and for our good. And there is a very left-leaning group now that hates this country.
Unfortunately, 100%. And one of the things that I did learn about the individuals who I won't say just hate this country per se, but they have been taught, and whether they know it or not, they have been taught to keep the hate. Stay angry. Stay angry. Keep the rage. I can't remember all of the phraseology that I've heard over the last few years, but keep that vengeance mindset.
How they
Stay
keep
angry.
the divisiveness.
Yes, because if you're not angry, if you're chill, if you are, and I don't mean complacent, if you are at peace, you have the opportunity for joy. And when you have that, you just have this ability to see good in other people. But if you stay angry and you have that mental mindset of vengeance and anger, it doesn't matter what the other person says. You're hearing it with your tone of thought and your tone of voice. So
glasses.
Naturally, they are attacking you.
And I saw that this past weekend with a bunch of protesters in Washington, D.C. at the White House.
Oh, you mean when they shut down Biden's motorcade, blocked him in?
Yes, and they were talking about, Intifada?
Yes.
Yeah, and making other statements like that. I actually thought that they were in another country.
Oh, you didn't realize they were in
I did not
DC?
realize it was in something my tax dollars have helped pay for, along with hundreds of millions of others, that there is no place in this country for divisiveness like that.
And one of the individuals, I think they were trying to pull her away, but was saying, I am Hamas. And so it's not just about, I support Palestine, I support Palestinians wanting a free state, I support this. If you are Hamas, you are identifying with a terrorist organization. Now, I will say something I've been thinking about is our American Revolution. Technically, if you're identifying with George Washington or John Hancock or anyone else who was around in that time period, were you identifying with the terrorists, the overthrowers?
Every one of them were criminals.
They were all criminals. Now, would you call them terrorists? Maybe not. I would say in the sense that they actually repeatedly asked in writing, please stop taxing us to death. Please stop doing this. Please stop doing that. Okay, we want to be our own entity because taxation without representation. They had a lot of that. There was a lot that went on before they actually got to the part of fighting a war.
And it lasted a short amount of time in America because the tax burden on us now is horrendous.
It absolutely is horrendous. So I would like to talk about a few different things before we get away from Trump too much. I just want to note that he was found guilty, and it was having to do with the Adult Survivors Act. E. Jean Carroll, I'm going back because I'm not talking about last week, but he was found guilty in a prior case civilly under the Adult Survivors Act. So that started his kind of downhill ride with these, with the lawsuit, and then again with him being criminally charged. And so you have his, what was it, $454 million bill that he owes E. Jean Carroll, and I know he's appealing it. And that was with no, that wasn't that one.
No, the big one, the 450, was the property one, they were trying to take all of his property.
So that was the property. Sorry,
said
going
he
back,
misrepresented the value of
the valuation of his property. Okay, so sorry, I need to go back even further. Going to E. Jean Carroll and him losing the lawsuit that she brought against him, the Adult Survivors Act took away the statute of limitations there in New York and allowed her to sue him civilly. He loses. Not going to relive that one, not going to repeat everything that went on with it. So the state senator, Kevin Parker, who helped to push it forward with this Adult Survivors Act, it turns out that Kevin Parker had some skeletons in his closet and is now being sued under the Adult Survivors Act for rape. Now Kevin Parker has come out and said, can't sue me under this law. This law is unconstitutional.
So does that mean if it's found to be unconstitutional, they will throw
They
that
would
case
have to.
out?
They would have to. So you think that one of the firm supporters, that state senator, is going to help to push and undo what happened to Trump in his other case?
To help undo what's potentially going to happen to him?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then my note about Paula Collins is that she wants to send all the MAGA people to re-education camps. She is running to replace Elise Stefanik. She wants to send all of the MAGA people to re-education camps because they don't understand anything and they are just so far gone that they need to be re-educated.
Well, I think that she needs to go back to public school or wherever she came from and realize that she's the one that needs the re-education. She basically just spit in the face of 50-some million people. So just because you have a disagreement with somebody's political beliefs doesn't mean you go off the deep end like this.
Yes.
You shouldn't do it as a Republican. They shouldn't do it as a Democrat.
Yeah, why do we keep hearing about re-education camps?
Or an independent or whatever. I thought we were done with re-education camps and that kind of thing. I thought we dealt with that with the Mormon Church and other organizations that wanted to.
Each step we seem to just slide back.
Straight backwards.
Yes.
Because what do? Just like
Erase history.
all the statues that have been removed from the Confederate days. What's happening? We're marching our way right back into a potential civil war. And it's going to be, will it be north-south, east-west? No, it's going to be, I believe, probably haves against have-nots. Because people are tired of all of this. And if you listen to one of the guys that a lot of people don't like, but I do, Tucker Carlson, I did not realize that his dad was a CIA operator. And he is very knowledgeable. He's a lot more knowledgeable than just a standard journalist. And he has started to break down on a couple of other websites why these government entities are doing this and what they're marching towards. So I think they're going to march to a brick wall, and then that's where the, quote, proverbial rubber's going to meet the road. That's where this thing's going to go just totally sideways in a metaphorical sense.
Hopefully we don't have to get there, but those in charge seem to, as we have talked about, they're able to hold power. The swamp is very swampy, and it did not get drained.
Well, you're right, it didn't. And I know we're trying to contain ourselves to 2 or 3 topics during an episode, but you talk about one thing and it sends you off in a different direction.
It does, because of how interconnected things
Yes.
are.
It's just like a war on one side of the world, a war on the other. Now, I listened to and I counted up how many times our government and others have asked Israel for a ceasefire.
Okay, how many times?
And I stopped at like 95, okay, from different countries over the last few months. Not once has America asked Russia and Ukraine for a ceasefire. Hey, let's go to the table. Let's figure this out. There's too many civilians and military people dying.
Right. And we don't. And in fact, so we're going to have a few extra topics today. One of the things that I saw as far as Biden with Ukraine, with the Ukrainian President Zelensky, is at the one point that he apologized that it took so long to get 225 million or 255 million, thereabouts, 200 and some odd million dollars to help with their electric grid. And he apologized that it took so long. Federal government hasn't sent 200 and some odd million or anywhere thereabouts to help Hawaii with their electric grid on our own homeland.
No, and nor have they done squat to help them in Lahaina.
Yeah, with just the fires in general and taking over the areas and helping to clear it out. I understand states need to take care of themselves to a degree, but this was such a disaster that the feds should have stepped in even more than what they did.
And now, because of the way everything burnt, all the ground they're calling hazardous.
Right. And if you can call it hazardous, you could take it and then sell it off to some companies for super cheap. And then guess who gets their pocketbook?
Right. And I know there isn't a conspiracy here. It was a bunch of mistakes by a bunch of people.
Sure. There's no blue laser conspiracy on this one.
None of that hooey. It's a mistake by one person, which perpetuated by another one, then another one.
Right.
And by the time the fire started,
some of the mistakes that came out is the wind was already pushing the electrical lines to the ground. They did not shut them off in time. In addition, there were Hawaii Electric Company, Helco, is it with an L?
HELCO.
Okay, Helco. I was trying to remember all the letters in the acronym. Okay. They had people who were working on the lines along with police officers who were shutting down certain areas. So they told people after the fire had started and everyone was trying to evacuate one way, sorry, you can't come this way. The electric people are like, sorry, we're working on this. You can't come this way. Turn around and go back. Well, turning around and going back was to the fire.
Right into the fire, which
and so that was a big
sad.
mistake.
Yes.
And so the people that survived were the ones that said, oh, heck no, and drove anyway. Went around them, did it anyway.
You're right.
That's in the mistake. Like, why wouldn't we help?
Why wouldn't we help them, one state, with that problem?
With a big disaster.
But we'll help a country that's currently being annihilated, and they're being annihilated because it's a proxy war sponsored by us.
Yes.
We want Putin to lose. Not we, personally.
Yes.
I don't have a dog in this fight. If there was Americans on the ground fighting,
yeah, our people
100%.
left Russia after they kept trying to conscript our people into the war efforts that were going around all over there in Asia and Europe. So our people left. We don't have a dog in this fight. All of that to say, does it make it any better to have a dog in the fight or to not have a dog in the fight?
No, because
it's still not your country.
It's not our country, but we as an earth and as different countries and people, I don't think we've ever had peace worldwide. There's always somebody that's warring with somebody. Mm-hmm. It's in our human nature or something that we just love to kick the crap out of another group. And we're not happy until it's a done deal.
Well, let's look at the old gladiators. Okay, sorry, another segue, just real quick. Let's look at the gladiators, right? They built a whole Roman Colosseum. So the people could watch gladiators fight. There has been something about fighting that has been in us for many a years.
That's why we have MMA and stuff.
Yes. And you can look biblically too. We have been fighting. We've talked about warring tribes. We've talked about all of that. It is something that is
thousands of years.
So are we, little old baby United States, couple 100 years old? I understand we grew up big real fast. Why does that make us any more important in our says in these different?
It shouldn't. Here's the thing that bothers me. Here's the thing that bothers me is you don't know what YouTube outlets and algorithms to watch and listen to and understand, because you have one. I'm not going to give names because they're big enough on their own without mentioning them. One yesterday talked about how there are now Russian warships
in the Caribbean,
in Cuba. And there is a Russian nuclear sub there. First time since the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there has not been one news outlet of any major consequence that's talking about it. And you have Putin, who one of my coworkers told me, Putin's a nut. He's going to get himself killed. Well, he must not be too much of a nut because he's former KGB. He is running a pretty large country that has more nukes than we do, and they're willing to use them, unfortunately. And he has threatened us that, hey, look at me. I'm 90 miles away from Miami now.
Right. For those of you, I know Mark just said it, for those of you who are not a study of land places, as my husband would say, for those of you who are not a study of land places, I would like you to think about this. When the Bay of Pigs happened and we let down the CIA, was it the CIA at the time?
Yes.
Did not fully support the revolutionaries, so to speak, that were rising up there. We did not help them in Cuba. We then, immigration-wise, allowed people called the wet foot, dry foot. If you got across, you set foot on land, say there in Miami, or, wherever you happened to land that was U.S. soil, you were then essentially welcomed into the U.S. and given, you would work on your immigration status and eventually you could become a citizen. If you look at how those people escaped, rickety boats, makeshift boats, and they could escape from this island and make it to the U.S., how quickly do you think a warship could make it? I mean, and really, if they want to pop off a nuke, they're already in distance. Need not go any further. They're already there. But if we're talking like, probably not going to do a ground invasion, they're real close. Get close enough, take out a few of our coastal sites, maybe get up to Mississippi, get over to Alabama.
And we also have part of China's fleet on the Pacific side, closer than they've been in a long time. Quote, still in international waters, but close enough to launch missiles like we launch at countries very easily.
And I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida, which is up in that, I don't know, armpit area. Mississippi, Alabama, no offense. I was up there too. And that's where we have our aviation. Not all of it, but some of it, along with others. Not going to say every base that's within distance, but pretty close. Pretty darn close.
Well, this assured mutual destruction type stuff is pretty alarming. And there's a lot of geopolitical experts that are saying that this has the potential to be trouble. And the thing that bothers me is even if Trump does win, is he going to be able to de-escalate all this stuff around the world? What kind of America is he going to be put in charge of? Is he going to be put in charge of one that through his negotiating skills and his magic, he can calm everybody down, get the economy turned around, and get us rolling again? Or is he going to be one that's going to end up being the worst of the worst presidents because he was left a royal,
mess.
You know what show, a big mess.
Yes,
a royal mess.
And they each claim, even outside of this issue, they each claim that they were left a mess by the last person and they were the ones that had to fix it. But some of what Joe Biden has done with his presidency is to make sure that Trump can't undo what he's doing. And so if you need someone to fix it, but you made sure that somebody can't undo it, where is that going to leave us?
Right. And now I understand after all these years why every time they talk about a program, it's a 10-year program. Oh, it's going to take us 10 years to do this. We got to implement it. We got to keep it going. Because by then, the programs are either forgotten about or they're extended or there's a specific parsing of words where the law cannot be removed.
Yes.
It's a permanent thing. I
Right.
don't know how a law can be permanent. You should be able to go back to Congress, have them rewrite it, and then sign it and boot it out
Maybe they
the
just
window.
know that it won't happen. But if you look at just even under immigration, we have individuals by the millions who have come in illegally across the border.
This many.
At least
9
9.
million.
And I've heard that with the gotaways, it's even more that we just cannot fully account for. And we have Biden, who for years is saying, "Oh, I can't act. Congress has to act," even though on his first or in his first week in office, he took away everything that Trump had done. And then he says, "Oh, I can't do an executive order. It's got to be Congress." And Congress has been fighting in part because every border bill has Ukraine money, or it's a Ukraine border bill, not a real border bill, or it just says, well, everybody's legal now, or everybody, we're just going to forgive everything. Everything that they're putting forward is not a real border bill. And now, come to find out, they're going even further, even though Biden has now signed an executive order. It's pretty much just encouraging everyone who would come in illegally through the desert or through the waterways or however they're going to do it, instead go through a port of entry, because they're now going to essentially stamp you in. You're going to still be illegal, but this time you're stamped in.
Yes. Mayorkas let the cat out of the bag a couple of days ago when they pulled up an old video of his when he said this was going to take time to do.
Oh, yes.
And then now he's saying, well, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we need more money. Basically what he is saying is it's going to take more time, is what he said 3 years ago. Exactly what they wanted to happen happened.
Yes.
Because you can't go from minimal numbers to maximal numbers and say, oh my gosh, we got a reverse course here.
Well, for 3 years, we've been told that there's not a problem. So if there's not a problem, well, it's not a problem because you're getting exactly what you wanted. So I want to say that I was actually helping, side story, my 8th grade nephew with his social studies homework. And we talked about push factors and pull factors for immigration. So in the context of his class, we were talking about historical immigration. Why did the Chinese come to and build railroads? Why did the Irish immigrate en masse? And what about when the Germans came, et cetera, et cetera? And we talked about the push and the pull factors. You might get pushed out of home, say like the Irish, because of the potato famine. You might get pulled into America, a pull factor coming to America because you see it as a land of opportunity. The Chinese saw work. They could help to build the rails, and then they could send money home and they could help their families. So you have what's called push and pull factors. So looking at our modern immigration the last few years, what are our push and our pull factors? Well, somebody in their home country might say, I live in war-torn insert country here, and I am seeking to flee from that. My country is attempting to murder me, and so I'm fleeing and I want to seek asylum in the United States. But some of these other pull factors that we have been seeing is years worth of rent covered, hundreds of dollars a week on debit cards given, food pantries given. Now, technically, the feds are not supposed to hand over money to illegal immigrants on these programs. There's not supposed to be programs. But the workaround now is to give grants to non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and have the NGOs do it. And so they're doing it. They're setting up all of this shop, all of this free money. The states are doing it too. Here in California, you can get free health care. It's not free, as we know. Somebody's got to foot that bill. Taxpayers are footing that bill. Free housing. We've seen veterans and others, elderly, kicked out of their homes because the government in another program offered more money for illegal immigrants to be housed in that community. So in the context of immigration, push and pull factors, man, if you're in a country where you make less than $1 a day and life is hard, and you hear that they're going to give you...
Come to America.
So why do you think our immigration is so high? Illegal immigration is so high. That would be... And the everyday American that's struggling to put food on the table through our inflation, they try to tell us that, oh, it's gone down in the last month, 2 months, 3 months. No, it's not going up as fast. But if you look at Trump time and Biden time and you watch that, it just goes up. Because my eggs, my milk.
Yes. And if it was at, let's say, let's pick a number, not a real number, fictitious number, 5% under Trump, and it goes up to 20% under Biden, and it goes down to 17 over 3 years. Well, that's not good.
No, it's still not good.
It's still not good.
But all we have to do, instead of blaming immigration, illegal immigration for the problem, and then blaming inflation for the problem, we just say it's evil corporate greed. Biden handled the inflation. Biden handled the border. Therefore, it's just evil corporate greed.
Some evil corporations that are padding their pockets through donations and quid pro quo and going to work for them when you're out of office. It'd be those corporations,
just
right?
Those.
Let's go to a country, though. I believe it. Where did MS-13, where are they from? El Salvador, right?
Yes.
Even though MS-13 started in Los Angeles.
We, U.S., we created them.
Yes. And there's a whole story about MS-13 that I just learned from the current president of El Salvador by watching Tucker Carlson and a 2-hour special on him. El Salvador is the safest country right now in North America.
Didn't they go and jail all of the
They cleaned
gangs?
things up, and they took the gang control out of prisons. Okay. So he was also, and this is where I'm going with it, saying that 18% of the El Salvadorians that were pulled to America now want to go home. It's so safe, they want to go back to their country of origin.
And I believe El Salvador was one of the ones that we gave temporary protected status to when things got bad. So sometimes what happens is there's a mass situation in a particular group, for instance, gang violence and police violence, government violence might be so high that we say it would be unfair. You're visiting here in the United States and something happens in your home country. It would be unfair for us to tell you to go back. We are knowingly sending you into, say, a war-torn country, a famine situation.
Strife.
So what we'll do as a country is decide to give temporary protected status. It means you can stay here, you can get a work permit, you're lawfully able to do everything in the United States for the most part, working, renting.
What it means is we're getting ready to tax a bejesus out of you.
We want your tax money.
Right.
But we'll let you work and live here. And then when your country, your home country recovers, the idea is now you can go back. We gave you a temporary haven. So we've had, for instance, TPS for Haiti, temporary protected status for Haitians after the earthquake that hit there, followed by the cholera outbreak. I want to say 1 in 7 Haitians was affected by it. They were living in tent cities, 1 million of them. I want to say it's a population about 7 million. So 1 million of them after the earthquake didn't have housing, living in tents, like having a very difficult time. So we said it would be unfair if we told you to go home because you came here, you were visiting, something happened in your country, you can't go home. However, we had a whole bunch of people who had been illegally residing here for decades come out and say, I can't go home. Can you give me a work permit now?
Mm-hmm. I was
we encourage
smiling and chuckling because that's one of the locations that the Clinton Foundation went down and opened a bunch of cell phone stores and a bunch of other worthless stuff during one of the...
And they're funneling money?
Yes.
I mean, that's just how they funnel money. But just to kind of, piecing it all together, we have a president who we know isn't running the show, but his name is on everything. His name is stamped on every single thing.
Yes, it is.
We have Alejandro Mayorkas, who, as you noted a few years back, said that it's just going to take us a little bit to get up and running, but we'll have everything smoothed over. A few years later, what do we see? Everything's running rampant. Illegal immigration. We're taking away police. We're taking away school from children. We're taking away services from vets even.
Out of control.
So yeah, they've taken away services from vets to make sure that illegal immigrants are taken care of. We have a big problem right now, and all of our money is being funneled away from that. But I believe that this is just going to give them a further push to say, we now have too many people illegally residing here to possibly remove all of them. So we are going to see an amnesty program.
Well, I do believe there is a president of past that actually rounded up a bunch of illegals and sent them home back to their countries of origin. I don't recall which one, but I know there was a president that did it. There is precedence for it, so it can be done.
So one of the things I wanted to say about our immigration problems, we have a lot of laws on the books that would, all we have to do, and really, Biden does not have to issue an executive order for this. All he has to do is say, enforce the laws.
What?
And guess what? If you say enforce the laws, people can be removed to their home countries. And I understand that we don't have enough judges right now. We do need more judges so that way people who need to go in front of an immigration judge can go in front of an immigration judge and plead their case. They may have a solid claim to say asylum. But a lot of the people, as I've noted before, they're economic migrants that are coming over here. So they have no lawful claim to asylum.
So whose fault is that? That they're economic migrants?
It's nobody's fault.
Okay.
Wanting a better life. I don't blame them for wanting a better life.
Push, but shouldn't they be looking at their own leadership within their own country saying, I don't want to pick up and go 5,000 miles away and go learn a language that I don't speak, live in a neighborhood I'm not familiar with. I don't know how to drive. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to write.
Okay, but yes and no. While you can say, I wish for my country to change, if you put another place on a pedestal, how many times have we done this in our own lives? The grass is greener on the other side. I am having so many problems here. This is a terrible place for me. I hear right now the United States is a land of milk and honey.
That's it. I'm moving out of California.
Hi, Tennessee. Hi, Tennessee. How you doing?
I get it. But there has to be a point where we have to have a maximum occupancy sign at the borders and say, we're full.
Well, absolutely. And we have the ability to turn people away at the border. I know a lot of people think that we seemingly don't, because Biden says, I can't fix this. And Congress says, Congress has not passed an immigration law yet. So since they haven't passed an immigration law, the same immigration laws that existed with Trump are here.
They're still on the books. And I know you're no longer in immigration, but here's a question for you. If we're allowing all these people in, we're doing all of this form and function for them. I'll just take the Filipino people. Are they still on hold?
Yes. So
they should all be allowed in. If there's 100,000 of them that are on hold, been on hold for 5, 10, 15 years, they should be given carte blanche and they all should get to come tomorrow.
So here's the thing about our Congress makes the laws. Congress sets the number of visas per country. There's a per country capita.
They set the limits.
There's an overall limit for the world. And then they also cap countries that reach a certain limit within those. We have people waiting decades. Philippines is a big one. Mexico's a big one. China, India. And depending on what they're coming over, what visa category they're in, can be some are longer than others.
Right.
And that is one where all of the people, I would gladly accept Congress saying, okay, we are going to say this year, anyone who has been on the list at all, come on in.
We should be flying. Flying then.
Well, yeah, because we've been saying come. So you know what? We need to say to everybody who's been waiting, you can come now. Here's your visa. You've been in the legal line for decades.
Agreed.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.